radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear.
Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. Today is June 26, 2017. And we are screaming by this year. I can't believe it. I actually feel like we've been traumatized in this country. I'll just tell you straight up the truth. So I brought with me today a friend. I asked a friend of mine, Ed Oz, who is a kind of a citizen journalist. He wrote a book called Unstoppable Joy. He and I get along excellently well because we both believe that happiness is resistance. And he and I were talking about the trauma that we're going through, and I thought I'd bring him on air so we could just have this discussion and share it with my audience. So thanks, Ed, for joining us.
Oh, Thank you very much, Lonnie, thanks for having me on.
Great.
And as you were thank you for the good introduction. I'm a person who loves to be aware of all of the dark things that are going on, but at the same time believes, like you said, that the best way to resist them is to personally make your life and your family's life and your people that you touch lives as happy as possible. That is one thing all of us can do on a personal level, no matter what the politicians do.
Wow.
And you're right about us living in trauma, and it's kind not to get too political, but that's what we're about. I was thinking, we could have a new expression here, Trumpetize.
Well, I have a hashtag. I created called Trump Trauma. Every time I post about Trump, because we're in a Trump trauma. He really is. And to be honest, this whole revelation of him accepting the fact that Russia had been meddling in our elections, and it wasn't that they meddled. They basically, what we've learned is they stole our data. They basically stole information on us that, yeah, you can get, but the fact that they were in our system stealing data on Americans, to me, really, and this is why I think he had to have the turnaround, because so many people were on his page going, why doesn't he care? After we've had the hearings last week where they told us 21 states were compromised, and so instead of saying Obama left us all these things that we can set up instantly, we're going to implement everything that Obama left for us to do, he's blaming Obama. It's like, the next step, Ed, is he's going to take credit for these things that he's going to implement that Obama set up.
But let's try to look at this big gaslighting picture that you're talking about. The truth is, no major personality in America could be as effective as getting us upset as the man who was the boss in The Apprentice, because we have basically all been put into the position of being contestants on The Apprentice, waiting for when we're going to get fired. When's our health care going to go?
Well, we've been fired, man. We have gotten.
But I mean, he specializes in keeping us there. I mean, as you and I have discussed, sometimes it almost seems like he spends all of his time thinking about what can I do that's going to upset the public the most.
Yeah,
and he doesn't.
Well, no,
I don't seem to make sense until you pull back to the gaslighting perspective.
I don't think he's that conscious. I think he's a true abuser. I think he does.
Well, as you and I have discussed, I think he's partially a CIA asset, and that a lot of what he does, he's just reading a script just like he did on The Apprentice.
Maybe that's it. You think he's just reading a script, Ed? I don't think so. I think he's out of control. And I think what they're going to do.
When he talks, he's not reading a script. But when he does something like, Qatar, we're going to cut them off, he seems to get calls from the CIA and goes, that just so happens we have our largest military base there. I think you need to call them up and apologize. I mean, it's obvious he's following instructions.
Well, yeah, it's obvious they all. Anyone who walks into the White House follows instructions. Let's just be clear. That's what me, that's what convinced me. At first, when Obama took over, I thought, oh God, finally I was still naive. I thought finally we get the Bush crime family out of the White House. And then within weeks, we discovered that all of his advisors are the Bush crime family advisors. And he clicks this little Sig Heil. And instead of going after Cheney and the Bush crime family and setting things right in this country, he decides to pick up health care of all godforsaken things. Like, really? Like, that was the weirdest thing in the world. And when that happened, and then they refused to give a single payer, even though most doctors in America had signed petitions saying, we want single payer. Then they give us this health care for
people hated what happened. People hated what happened with Nixon and Ford, but to be quite truthful, that was a much more honest way to deal with it. Obama just should have pardoned them all. Instead, they kicked it under the carpet like there was nothing that happened.
Isn't that the gaslighting? Isn't that the gaslighting? Though?
Exactly. I mean, back in the 70s.
Let's just pretend Trump, he pretends like he has no one, like all of his advisors whose fingers are sticky, Jeff Sessions, who refused to talk about the Russians because he knew if he did, he would have to start lying. So this is the thing. These people are all just such traitors. I can't get over it that we're actually in the generation to watch this unfold as we watch the lemmings just drop off the cliff. You and I spend a lot of our times on social media talking to people defending Trump.
Let's talk about a subject you and I touched on last night in a private conversation, and that is this statistic was so shocking to me that I had to go out and verify it several places. At first, I thought it was one of those internet things that was total bullshit. But no, it's absolutely true. And that is, the Milk Association went out and did a very credible poll that involves 1,000 people. And what they were doing was simply market research to find out what people thought of milk, what they knew about it, and how it worked in their lives, a typical market research poll. The shocking thing was, they determined that 7% of Americans firmly believe that chocolate milk comes from brown cows. Now, if that isn't a deliberate dumbing down of education, the result of the dumbing down, and where this gets scary, Lonnie, is how big of a percentage point changes elections. 1%? 2%? We have 7% of voters who think that chocolate milk comes from brown cows.
Yeah, well, the likelihood is those voters don't vote, Ed. They're probably in the non-voting party that says, nothing changes when we vote.
They're voting Trump. They're voting Trump.
Well, who knows? They might have voted for Clinton. For God's sakes, like in this last election, we can't point the finger at who's voting for the most horrible candidate because both of them were like, ugh.
Who did you vote for, Lonnie? Tweedledum or Tweedledee? I forgot.
I abstained. The first time in my adult life, I did not vote for a president when I could.
I could not vote for Hillary. There was just no way. And
we'll talk about America just accepting it, Ed. Let's just go to the Google News, like at the very front of it. At the world story, what pops up for me, it says Deutsche Bank's $285 million loan to Jared Kushner, just one of many for the Trump family, the day before his father-in-law election day victory. Then right underneath it, here we are. There's 3 stories about the Trumps. Ivanka Trump, quote, I try to stay out of politics, unquote. I'm not kidding. These are real. And then the sound of silence, lack of Comey tapes fails to derail the media coverage. You know what's really this is about? As if it's the media hyping up the story instead of really, we had the DNC. Did you see that another DNC, an attorney for the DNC got murdered?
Yes. I also saw today, very interesting, it's probably maybe not showing on your feed, but Russia pulled that ambassador back to Russia.
The one that in the picture with Trump, the one with the picture with Trump.
Yeah, he's gone. Putin snatched him back. He's done his work. He'll probably get a promotion, I bet.
No doubt. He probably has a big fat bonus. This is the thing. Well, and now we're on the verge of the quote media, talk about mainstream media selling it to us. Now they're trying to tell us that they're going to sell us this new, the Trump Care program. Like, don't worry, we're going to push it through and everything. This is kind of the tone we're getting on television. At first, there was no way they'll ever pass it.
May I interject something from my entertainment background? And as you know, my whole family was actors, actresses, and entertainers going back several generations. So I learned what entertainers do. And Trump has done this with the media. Trump portrays the media as the enemy, and oh my God, they're screwing me, et cetera, et cetera. Well, there's an old standard in entertaining, and that is if you're a magician on stage, you hire somebody to be in the audience to call you a fraud. Okay? So you do a really impressive trick, and then the guy you hired in the audience goes, I know how that's done. You're a fake. Because that builds your credibility. And it also deflates the audience because all of the audience is skeptical. So this guy goes, oh, he's a fake. He's a fraud. The audience never realizes he's working for the magician. He is a part of the act.
Well, unfortunately, this audience has had plenty of reason to see that he's working for them. I mean, there's pictures of him and Clinton together. Even when after the election, he patted her on the back.
Without the media constantly discussing Trump, would he have won? No. It was their constant obsession and discussion of this guy that propelled him. And again, going back to entertainment, the old laughable phrase in Hollywood, there is no such thing as bad publicity. There's only publicity. I mean, this guy's straight out of the carnival. And a lot of people said the only reason he ran for president in the first place, I find this very interesting because you have talked about how maybe he accidentally pulled this off, that his original reason for running was to raise the ratings of The Apprentice, which he had a high financial stake in at that point. So remember what we were talking about before the show, the 200 FBI agents? Did I lose you?
Ed, explain that story on the FBI agents. Let's get into this. Ed wanted to share. Ed asked me if he read this. Let me give them some background.
If you told me this, I wouldn't have believed you. But no, it is absolutely the truth. And how this relates to gaslighting, I see, is that people accept this stuff just as, oh, okay, this is normal, right? I mean, the FBI wouldn't lie to us. They wouldn't do anything weird, right? They're the FBI. Okay? Well, we have a situation that's just on local Fox News is really the only place I've been able to find it in Kansas City. And that is last night at 2 a.m. in the morning, they had a second raid on the jail in Jackson County. You know, this is quite interesting, but this page won't come up anymore.
Well, I can believe it, but let me look at this.
Let me try. Now that we're discussing it, this is very interesting. Yes, I had the page open in my. Oh, here we go. Okay, FBI raids Jackson County Jail for second time in less than 2 years. Okay, now that's not a big deal, do you think? But here's the interesting part I find of this story. This is in Kansas City, Missouri. They had 200 FBI agents show up at the local jail at 2 in the morning. 3 entire busloads of agents. And if you go look at the pictures, they were equipped like an army to take over a country in South America. Heavy firepower, rifles 4 feet long in cases, flak jackets, bulletproof vests to enter a jail where everyone's locked up in cells. And where the most sophisticated weapon you could find would be what I call a spoon knife. You know, the inmates used to take spoons and turn them into knives by rubbing them in the concrete and creating an edge. Now, why in the world would we pay 200 agents overtime at 2 in the morning and all of that money and drama?
True. Something went down there.
To go do what's called a cell check in a jail.
Wouldn't we love to know which high, what do you call them? A high value prisoner is in there that they got out or brought.
Well, I don't think, actually my theory is even more sinister than yours. My theory is that whoever is running that jail is not cooperating in something, and this was a Godfather move. Hey, good morning. You don't mind if 200 of our agents shuffle through here, do you?
Wow.
A show of power. Because it's not for the inmates, but how could it possibly be for an inmate? That many people? And yet, no one on Fox News is going to complain about the wasted money or the entire absurdity of this.
Well, Ed, I found a study. This whole thing, what you're talking about is how coordinated all of it is. This is how it ties in. Because I found a study where you were, talking about these things about the Bernie Sanders, the most of Clinton's stuff, 84% of it was negative. This was a study, and Bernie Sanders got 32% less coverage than Trump, than anybody actually, 32%. And Trump had something like 55% more. In the value of dollars, there was this whole study that was done that showed just the value of dollars among his other, just for them talking on television, coverage of Trump, this is what they talked about. Polls and projections by 21%. Issues and ideology, 27%. Activities and event, 34%. Personality qualities, 6%. And, what was this one? Yeah, issues and ideology is 12%. And the 27% was other, like him being his horrible comments and all that stuff like that, So that was 26.
Why don't
But this is the value of dollars they gave him, and ad equivalent in values was $55 million.
Maybe you could explain what you and I discovered. We're talking about the media complicity in this, about that horrible story that came out of him grabbing pussy, and how that story worked totally to his benefit.
Well, why don't you explain it, Ed? Remind people, don't get too graphic. It's 8 o'clock in the morning here. There are children in the room probably. So
I'm sorry.
Kind.
Okay, well, yeah, I didn't mean to.
I don't have to watch your language.
I didn't mean to talk about his kitty cat. But in any case, all of you out there remember when that story came out, Access Hollywood. It was some old tape from the 1980s where Trump was saying some really despicable things. I mean, something that you would think almost any person with any amount of morals would be absolutely repulsed by. And when that story came out, the media totally focused on it. All of the pundits were saying, this is the end of Trump. Look at how bad this is. We got nothing to worry about anymore. He's not going to get elected. Look at this story. Look at this story. Look at this story. They played it hundreds of times. What people don't realize is there was another story that just happened to be released that very same day that the media didn't pay any attention to because they were really busy with this other story, which was so sexy and weird. And that is, on that very day, the FBI, Justice Department, released that the Russians were actively meddling in the election. Now, this was long before the election happened, if you remember. So they expected, as a matter of fact, the guy from the Justice Department said, I guess my mistake was not camping out in a sleeping bag in front of the Congress building so I would get notice. Because they expected that the media were going to grab onto this Russia is meddling with the election story, and that was going to cause a major furor, that it was going to change everything about how the election was run, that there were going to be additional security put up, that Obama would do this and Obama would do that. But none of that happened because that horrible story came out about Trump. My theory is they were holding that story as an ace in the hole. They knew it wouldn't really damage him with his supporters, which it didn't. And the Russian story was way more of an issue. Way bigger of an issue. So they threw that out to the gaslit public.
So you think when the media saw this story, your position is this: when the media saw this story, they pulled out these old tapes, these blackmail tapes on people, and said, "Hey, we're going to play this."
The CIA did. The CIA tells the media what to write every morning. As a matter of fact, the CIA sends out a sheet of preferred stories.
Preferred. Let's talk about these ones, not those ones.
Exactly.
Well, so no wonder Trump had no problem saying, "Hey, you guys, you can't come in here and we'll tell you what we want to tell you." He just took that to the next level. If these guys are taking that sheet and talking about the preferred, if they're actually been complying all this many years, no wonder Trump walks in there and is like, "Are you kidding? We'll just start telling them what to do."
If folks want to do some research, Operation Mockingbird was admitted to in 1972 in front of the Frank Church Investigation Committee. And the head of the CIA said that they had over 425 agents located in every major news media, and that they basically controlled news distribution in the USA.
That's treason.
The next day, he lost his job, and George Bush was appointed, and he promised that stuff would stop.
Wow. So we've had a silent coup in this country. That's essentially because that's really, if you take away the media, this is why nobody effectively works. This is why nothing gets done. We really are a banana republic, and this is why they're going to slam down this healthcare thing, and they are privatizing everything. They are turning us into children. We have militarized police that are murdering people in the streets.
But let's.
It was October 7th, 2016, Ed, by the way. So this kind of really gets me. This is why I want you to talk about this on the air. Okay, I'm going to hone in on this because this is really like, so your position is you think that because the Russia story was about to break and they knew it was going to break, they had to say they couldn't hide it. They had to discuss what was going on.
Exactly.
October 7th, 2016, the media broke the Trump assault story, because that's really what he was admitting to, is assault on the video.
That's a good way to put it. I like that.
That's assault, what he said he did. Even to married women, the month before these people elected him, and nobody cared because his wife, who was probably battered herself, came out and said, "Oh, that's just guy talk. I forgive him.
Well, and I hate to go really far into left field, but the truth is, his wife.
You're saying they knew that they could tell that his supporters would vote for him anyways, no matter what, that they could get over that trauma, but they could not get over the trauma of just having everyone talking about Russia meddling because all of his cabinet was too icky sticky with the Russians.
Exactly. And, and that would make, because remember, a lot of Trump supporters, they swallowed him like a bitter pill. They were basically Hillary haters.
Yeah.
It wasn't that they were really enthusiastic about him.
Yeah, there's a small portion that are pretty hardened, I believe him and want to believe in the good guy theory. Good guy. He's basically a good.
Well, and there's a significant proportion of his supporters that believe he's going to bring the apocalypse or the rapture or something like that. No matter what he does.
In my view, is one of the problems with the Bible. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Let's just screw everything up and cause the death of everyone and say it's God.
That's right. He's always the handy excuse. Right?
That's a big accusation to say that the media inside the United States help manipulate the American people's emotions and keep them from what should be the biggest story rocking our country right now.
Well, especially a month before the election. Especially a month before the election.
Well,
and nobody even really talked about the Russian thing after that, until after the election.
We saw a woman that Trump put in say that they found out 21 states had been compromised by the Russians. Mm-hmm. Compromised by
the Russians. And I want to mention to your audience one of the biggest stories right now, today, that they are ignoring about the Russians. They keep focusing on, the Russians broke into these computers, the Russians stole all of this data, but they didn't really change any election results. And that is the biggest pile of baloney possible, because Russia had thousands of agents working on Facebook, changing people's opinions. Okay? You don't have to go into a ballot box and grab a ballot, even electronically, to monkey with an election if you have an army of propaganda people going Hillary to children. Okay? Yeah. I mean, that's how they did it. They did it using social media, even if they didn't touch any ballots. And is the media talking about that story? No. It's all about whether they actually switch ballot numbers. How about the 6 months beforehand where the Russians created all of these outrageous stories to build up Trump and slay the competition? And the Russians hated Sanders more than Hillary. They went after him too. So, as I'm sure you're aware, the majority of Americans now get all of their news off Facebook.
Off Facebook, I don't.
Me neither. But what they do, they click on stories on Facebook.
Because I don't think a lot of youth go to Facebook. They don't go to Facebook to look at the news. I'll just tell you that. I know a lot of you tell me that Facebook.
I know.
You only go to Facebook if you're an old person, really. That's what they say.
They go to Kick. They go to all sorts of other places. I mean, there's all sorts of news stuff that has caught their eye, and some of it's good. I mean, some of it I like because it's so different than Facebook. I mean, Facebook has become, this might sound weird to you, but to me, Facebook has become like the old 60s and 70s television. It's totally controlled. It's completely commercial. And, there's really very little that's not artificial about it. And
what's interesting is you can see the political temperature, and people post things on Facebook to get the word out about stuff. I think, and this is the thing about those. So we're coming up into a very critical time, like just energetically and just with politically happening. And this news for Trump to demean people at a time when he should be getting busy about the Russians and instead of, that is a complete outright lie when he said Obama didn't do anything. Obama set things up so that when Trump got into office, he could jump on it and put it in. And I guarantee you they left them written instructions and told them verbally and probably put it on tape, some kind of security.
But remember, from my experience in the world of entertainment, Trump needs an enemy. Okay, he needs this Lex Luthor.
Well, it doesn't have to be the American people. Let's just be clear.
But no, it isn't. It's Obama. It is the American people, but he's able to portray the enemy as Obama and Clinton still, even though neither of them are holding office. That's what amazes me. It's theatrics. He knows Obama did it. None of this is Obama's fault as well as anybody else. It's theatrics.
It's all
great at theatrics.
This is the shock. We're just two ordinary citizens. This is the very interesting thing here, Ed. We're just two people, little two peons in the world, moving about our lives, completely put into shock after Fukushima. I think you and I became friends after the Bush thing. But I think
I've got to inject what just happened. The Supreme Court is allowing a limited version of Trump's travel ban to take effect. Will consider case and fall. When does the Supreme Court do that?
Right before
we're not going to decide the case. We're not going to decide the case, but you can go ahead and do it anyway.
Yeah, they do allow that.
Okay.
Yes, that has been allowed.
Well, at least so they threw a threat out to Trump. The limited travel ban will take place.
That's just great.
Isn't that great? And it's just
this is the thing. Obviously, what they're not talking about is why we have the threat, and it is the industrial military complex and the idea, the reason, the imperialism that your stuff is ours. That's really what it's about. And what they are doing to us is, in fact, exactly what they did to Chile. They are privatizing everything. They are going to gut all of our. There's not.
Lonnie, you just took a course on South America. Could you give people like a little 3 or 5 minute synopsis of what happened in Chile? Because very few people know that.
Well, this is in Chile. I hope people know this. This is so critical. The CIA, in its lust to spread because Americans rejected the neoliberal agenda here. We said no to the new, what do they call it? The new American century or something. Alan Greenspan wrote what they're doing now. This is the basis of their agenda.
Right.
The theory is that let the rich people, the people who know how to do business, just do it. Free market capitalism without regard. We own dominion over the planet, so it doesn't matter how we ravage the planet. It's ours to ravage. God will give us the grace to figure out the solutions. Don't worry about it. That really is their attitude. And
no, you're right.
That is fun. And so this is a fundamental difference, we're entering into what they're calling an anthropocentric age, where it's all changed by humans, but that's our they feel like that's our God-given right. Instead of ecocentric, where you believe you're part of the universe and you're part of the earth and we have to respect what's here and leave the world of nature the way it is so we can have the most beneficial life between all of us involved. There's two different philosophies but what we're being shoved into. That we have been shoved into. Forget the other idea, because guess what? And even that doesn't exist anymore, Ed.
Let me interject, and even the rest of the world. Let's go back to the 1970s when Bush was head of the CIA. As you know, there was a little bit of a problem in Jamaica with the people trying to liberate that country. Mm-hmm. And the CIA basically went in and just said, okay, the wealthy people are going to run everything because they know how to make the decisions. And Bush even said that in an interview on TV. that
Donald Trump just said it. We don't want the poor people running things. He just said that.
Right. The wealthy people know how to run everything. And it was the wealthy people that have put all of the fucking people in Jamaica in misery.
And keeps robbing them, going, well, why can't you guys bring yourself up out of the gutter? Come on, go to your other house for the summer.
Exactly. Or migrate over to the other side of the island, and you'll even be worse off.
Okay, so this is the thing. Let's get back to this agenda. What they did was, so the CIA cooked up a plan to go to Chile. They tried to bring it into other countries that were burgeoning democracies, and they couldn't do it. So they just basically had to overthrow them and install dictators. That's what they did there. But that wasn't going over so well with the rest of the American public. People weren't happy. That it was obvious. We were seeing the strings and the ties since the 30s, 40s, 50s. We saw exactly what was going on. America wasn't happy. So the CIA cooked up a plan. Let's have one of their generals overthrow their Democratic, because he's so corrupt, we're going to take it back for democracy. That was the message. We're going to overthrow this corrupt president that just got elected, who's digging his dirty little hands and telling, everybody that we are going to have free stuff. The people get to go to school and you get to go to the doctor. That they weren't having that. So
right.
They brought in Pinochet, and they actually lent them our helicopters to make it look like it was a military coup. They basically burned the place down, installed Pinochet, who basically gutted every single institution in the country. They used to have free telephone. They were burgeoning. They were like giving people electricity. They had government subsidies like we do, exactly like we do, a lot of government subsidies. So they cut all that off. And they cut off the public schools. They cut off funding. And we see how cut off funding to hospitals has worked in Argentina, where there's nothing there. So these things, it causes catastrophic harm. And so what happens is they know, part of what they know is that it's going to make people protest and be angry. So then they have to bring in the militarized police to protect the assets of the rich people, because all the money goes to the rich people. Once you privatize it, they can charge whatever they want.
Well, as you know, as you know, Bush and his crew in Congress are trying to basically give away all of our national properties, our national parks.
You're talking Trump.
Allow them to be extracted. Exactly. And what I want to remind people is the eerie similarity of this to the Chiquita banana story. And that is down in that wonderful country where the United Fruit Company was importing bananas. The leader of the country decided, let's take the stuff that Chiquita isn't farming. They weren't trying to take their land, actually. They were trying to take the stuff that Chiquita had bought for future development, and they offered to pay Chiquita for that land so that they could give it to the actual people that lived in the country to farm. Well, that didn't set well with the United Fruit Company. The country had offered them 500,000 or 500 million or something, and they wanted $1 billion or something like that. I forget the exact numbers. But in any case, so they had contacts in the CIA and with the Eisenhower administration, and they basically took over that country, staged the same sort of coup you're talking about. And all of this was done, as you say, it's amazing how many of these coups are done to prevent the actual citizens of the country from getting the assets in the country.
And it's done by the CIA. This is the running
Iran,
thing.
The same exact thing. People go,
the United States has had a very bad history of this. And this is the thing. What we're seeing with this current administration is really the underbelly being exposed. I mean, this is why now when you tell me this about how they get these they give the CIA, actually, they give them, these are our preferred stories. That to me explained everything, like why Trump comes in and goes, hey, we might as well just start bullying you guys around, because who cares? You're not going to do anything. I mean, this is the interesting thing. And you see, we're on a radio station here we don't know how many people we're reaching, but you know what? Some people are listening, and they do not. This radio station, you can have ideas like this and have people talk about ideas. And you know why? They don't care. They don't care who knows, who doesn't know. They don't care.
Exactly.
They have complete power. Their plan is moving on, and Trump's going to do whatever he wants to all of us. And he is brutal.
Well, to
be honest, he's quite a brutal person.
But as you know, and so many people seem to like be in fantasy land about it, Trump and the CIA are basically the same thing. He's just a different type of actor they're using to get their policies done faster. That's all.
So you think Trump has been put in intentionally?
Well, you and I have often discussed where Trump originally got his money. And all you got to do is read Trump's book to find out that his money his first big deal in his book of the deal was taking over 90% interest in Resorts Incorporated. And before it was Resorts Incorporated, it was actually the Mary Ellen Paint Company. Kind of an interesting switch. And it was started in 1954 as a method of laundering drug money for the CIA. And it was actually started by the head of the CIA in 1954. And then it morphed into when they couldn't launder enough money with a chain of paint stores in the country, then they morphed it into gambling. And they, basically elbowed their way into Las Vegas and controlled some casinos in Las Vegas. But it was always an uncomfortable situation because Las Vegas was actually more controlled by the mob than the CIA. So the CIA was always having to look over their shoulders. So they found this guy by the name of Trump. And Trump ended up taking over Resorts International, which was a money laundering operation for the CIA. And you can go look this up on Wikipedia. This is not hidden information. So amazingly, once Trump took over Resorts International, he became the spokesperson to bring gambling to Atlantic City. They wanted the gambling in Atlantic City because then the CIA could maintain full control without the mob. And if you look at Trump's history, all of his money came from these amazing deals that like no one else could have possibly pulled off. And it all happened after he got Resorts International, after he became the major stakeholder. Now, are we to think that the purpose of Resorts International switched from money laundering the day he bought it? I doubt that. I think his power stems from the CIA and even the Bush crime family, because the head of the CIA, when he bought Resorts International, just happened to be George Bush. So, yeah.
Then what's the weird thing about him with the Russians then? How is this that, like, there are Russians all around this guy? One of his top advisors is Boris Alexandrovich Epstein, Epshteyn. He's Russian, a Russian-born American Republican political strategist, investment banker, and attorney. He is now the assistant communications director, considering the spying, assistant communications director for surrogate operations in the administration. Until he resigned in March in 2017. He resigned. But until then, he resigned. Now, how is it? So what is, if you think that he's part of the CIA, then they must know he's got Russians all around him.
Well, the CIA, my God. So maybe we know he won't release it.
If he is a CIA asset, wouldn't the Russians know that?
Absolutely.
I mean,
the Russians, here's the thing. The Russians, we have this little issue about Trump refusing to release his income taxes. Okay? And that is most likely because he got a crap load of money from the Russian crime syndicate. They loaned him money for his businesses.
Yeah.
So once you get tied in with the Russian crime syndicate, especially if you get tied in with them and owe them money, they're going to do everything they can. They're going to push every button and pull every lever they can possibly get. And you're right. This is like and the problem is, do we really think that the KGB and the CIA are all that different?
But if that is actually a real statement, if that's actually the reason he won't release his tax returns, that makes him blackmailable by the Russians then. If he's gotten himself involved in some dirty money, like it may be legal American wise, like he may not have a trouble here, but internationally that could you know what I mean?
Right,
like
exactly.
That disqualifies
And as you said, this money is legal. Any loan, as you know from your business, any loan is legal if it's on paper and the person loans you the money and there's an agreement to pay it back.
This is, the simple thing. If he's not really a CIA asset, which I think the more we speak about it, the more I'm thinking maybe he's just a complete dumbass having been used by both the Russians and the CIA.
Well, that could be too. I mean,
honestly,
because why would he need to go to
now
Russia?
Is just come clean with the tax returns and say, you know what, you guys, you're right. I have a lot of Russian people around me. Here's my tax returns. I'll resign as president and see you later. It's been a fun ride. And he could get out of it scot-free, just like that.
Well, he'll be pardoned no matter what goes down.
Yeah, but
just like Nixon. You brought up a good point. You brought up a good point. But, why would he take money from the Russians if he was a CIA asset? Well, my feeling is maybe he fell out of favor with the CIA at some point.
Maybe that was part of the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Just take as much money as you can, because he knew he would, the interesting thing is, this has been the shock. Two things happened in 2016. Bernie Sanders was betrayed by the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party expects us to click our heels and go Sig Heil. We're not going to talk about two people now having been murdered by the Democratic Party hitman somewhere along the line, and that you guys perpetrated a big offense against us and we need an apology. And then the second thing is this thing that you're talking about with Trump, how this information was unloaded about the Russians the day that this videotape came up. And the fact that Americans...
That had to be a plan. That could not be accidental. It's too brilliant.
It's exactly. And this is what I'm saying, like both sides, this is what we're saying, the whole political system, when he's talking about the swamp needs to be drained, that's such a gross understatement. It's not just drained. Like they are not creatures. They are human beings. They are men. And if they're not going to be people of integrity, we need to use the mechanisms of our government to get them out and to stop the subversiveness inside of our government. If we're going to maintain a government, we need to demand it be exercised, that we use our Constitution. It's outrageous.
Well, they aren't even patching the holes. In other words, everyone has been shocked that Trump, didn't release his tax return because there was a tradition, yada, yada, yada. Has Congress and Senate passed a law that all future candidates must release their tax returns? No.
They could compel him to show his tax returns. That's
exactly.
The reality.
Well,
if they wanted to.
And that's
they could
I'm emphasizing what you're saying. There are things they could be doing today to rein him in that are not being done. Is stuff that neither the Democrats or the Republicans act like they like. That's what boggles my mind.
Well, it doesn't.
They could compel. How many press conferences has Trump had since he's been president? Remember, he used to complain that Obama didn't get a lot of press conferences.
Yeah.
You know how many he's had in person? One.
Look, let's be clear. It's the same thing with Nancy Pelosi saying she's not going to step down. Nancy Pelosi is famously the woman who saw the torture tapes and immediately took impeachment off the table. That was her first act.
Right.
After she came out of that meeting, somebody asked her, she was talking about the tapes, how horrific it was. And then they said, well, when are we going to indict Bush and Cheney? She's like, oh, impeachment's off the table. They're like, what? You're just going to continue to let people be tortured. And so now here we are 10 years later with black people being shot by cops with impunity. If you're black, you can get shot. by a cop. That's just.
You know a story? Oh, you probably didn't see the story yesterday. The media kept it pretty well suppressed. A black cop was shot by white cops.
Oh my God.
And the black cop's lawyer said it was because he was black. What happened is the cops had pulled somebody over and they had their guns out, were doing their usual shit. I think it was in San Diego. And there was an off-duty cop there who came out to make sure everything was okay, that they didn't need any help, right? So they told him, lay down, and he's a cop. He knows what to do. So he lays down, he's in civilian clothes, puts his arms up, does everything right. A cop goes over and talks to him and recognizes him. And then yells to the other cops, oh, it's okay. This is Sergeant such and such, don't worry about it. He's one of us. And he stands up and one of the cops shoots him.
Did they kill him?
And said he feared for his life.
Did they kill him? He was killed? Oh, thank God.
No, he wasn't killed.
He said he feared for his life.
Right, because the guy was black.
And he's going to get away with it. He's going to get away with it, Ed. This is the issue.
Well, I don't know. He shot another cop. That complicates it.
No, he will get away with it because that is a reasonable. The jury instructions tell you to defer to
the judge basically
sense
deferred,
of fear.
And the judge deferred to that guy, feared for his life because he smelled marijuana a few days ago.
Wow.
You read that one, didn't you? The guy who shot the black guy back east and killed him. He smelled marijuana.
The whole thing is just outrageous. But what's more outrageous is that we have Americans defending a man who has very sticky fingers around Russians and refuses to give his tax returns, refuses to talk openly to the press, refuses to let his press secretary make public statements on camera. So it's not on camera, so they can't catch him in his lies. Because you know why? Sean Spicer's a bad liar.
Well, the other thing is, and your readers can go check for this story, the New York Times yesterday, I believe it was, decided that they wanted to publish all of the flagrant lies that Trump had told since the day he was elected. Mm-hmm. It filled an entire page of their newspaper, the print version.
Yeah, well, let's just see how they tear that one apart. You know what I mean?
It's fake news. It's all fake news.
So Trump got 23 times as much coverage as Sanders did.
Oh, that sounds more. I thought you said 23% more. No, that sounds like 23 times. Yes, that sounds like more in the ballpark.
Yes, but see, this is the interesting thing. We're both bringing up issues about how the media manipulates.
Right.
Like your big theory. This is the thing that's the most shocking about this is the idea is that this bombshell about Russia was unloaded the very day that coinkedinkily this vulgar tape hit the news. And then everybody had to pick sides and, oh my gosh, we're so outraged at what a fascist, misogynistic pig he is. And no one pays attention to the fact that the Russians were spying on us. On our getting voter data. It's not just spying on us, getting voter data. They got all of our names, social security numbers, dates of birth, gender preference, political preference. I mean, they got a trove.
Okay, let me tell you, the political data base that is controlled by Bannon's wealthy godparents, I guess I should call them, the ones who are behind Bannon. Okay, extremely wealthy family. Their database contains 2,000 data points on every voter in America.
Oh, wow.
2,000 data points. What's a data point? What magazine did they subscribe to? What television shows they watch? What websites did they visit?
Mm-hmm.
That's what data points are.
What comments do you leave on Facebook?
You got it. That's what data points
So this is the thing. We're talking about trolls, like how the Russians influenced America with the fake. And that's not just fake news. It could just be people making comments about being an outraged American. That's the thing. Like
that's what the Russians
get people
did.
going like mad dogs. You know, it's like slathering up the dogs that are super hungry, throwing them one morsel, and they all go stirred up crazy.
Well, and what part does that guy Zuckerberg have to do with this? Because why did he engineer a system where thousands of anonymous people can easily get on and influence opinions without having any verification that they're actually real individuals?
Well, the other interesting point is, let's think about this. Jared Kushner we just learned that he got a deal the day before, a huge loan the day before the election win. I mean, honestly, there is things just not right in Denmark here, the nepotism, and just sending him to Israel to do this deal and having him deliver to a boss, like having that young kid take the rap. They knew what they were sending. Netanyahu knew exactly who he was sending that kid into face. And he knew exactly the response that kid would get. So this is like there is something amiss here. I just cannot believe Americans cannot see before their very eyes that our country is being shoveled into a violent nuclear war without regret or remorse. If we do not stop, I mean, to me, these people are very, very extremely dangerous, and we need to demand that our Congress hold them accountable. We have the tools. Our Congress and senators can do something. Get on the horn, call your senators, and tell them to stop these people. This is just insane.
And by the way, on the activism note, folks, especially if you're a Republican, it's even more effective. Any of those senators that are saying they're not going to vote for the healthcare change, be sure to tweet them or email them and tell them that it's nice to see that they're being real American.
Yeah, because that bill is a disaster. It's like, oh, well, we'll fix it later. Really? Like, just count the time. The reality is the whole Obamacare is a disaster. Let's just be clear. The way they have it, we need single payer health.
No, I agree. But the way they shade the argument, the New York Times even, remember the fake news had an amazing quote that I put up on Facebook the other day, and that was, the elderly people are taxing America's economic future because of medical. It's not the fact that our medical people charge 1,000 times as much for every procedure as every other country. It's the elderly people. We're the ones that are screwing America by getting sick. They don't deal with the real issue. The real issue is our costs for medicine are laughable in all of the rest of the world.
Right.
I mean, right. Let me give you one example. Hepatitis C, the one thing everybody hates. Hepatitis C in the United States, the prescription procedure, which is 2 months of a prescription, costs $100,000. Wow. Which is why no medical care will cover that treatment for hepatitis C. Fly over to India, where my friend is a medical technician, and it is $860 for the same thing. The same exact thing. $860 in India, and they have good hospitals there.
But people that have insurance can afford it. See, this is the game. They charge a lot for it, but you have to have insurance to access.
But insurance won't cover hepatitis C. No insurance in America will cover it. They aren't going to pay $100,000 for a bottle of pills. You got to pay that out of your own money.
And hey, you know what, Ed? We have about 30 seconds left.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I just wanted to get us back on track before we get cut off. I wanted to thank you that you've been listening to Ed Oz, and pretty interesting little theory here. And I think it's, I don't know, doesn't seem too far off base to me, to be honest. I don't know how much Trump knows or doesn't know, but either way, I think that we need to be honest about what's our constitutional rights and assert them. So put your courage feet on, call your senators, you guys. Thanks, Ed, for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, you guys, we'll talk to you tomorrow. Take care. And bye.
This is Ozzy Scape.